Good morning. We're visiting with Jean Lawr. Could you give us your full name and where you're living now, Jean?
My name is Jean Elizabeth Lawr. I live in Georgetown now at the Sands condominium.
And what's your link to Ballinafad? When did you come to Ballinafad?
I came to Ballinafad as a toddler in the late 1940s.
And who was your parents?
My father was Archie Alfred Lawr. He was a soldier.
And did he come from the Fad before that? Or?
No, we didn't come from Ballinafad, but I understand my father was born in the Georgetown area.
I see.
And his parents lived in Georgetown.
So he was a soldier in the Second World War?
He was a soldier in the Second World War. So he bought an old barn-board house in Ballinafad for his war bride and the two children, my brother and I.
Just a bit more about his military career. You said he was an engineer.
Yeah, my dad was a sapper with the Canadian Engineers during the war. He went overseas with his two brothers, and the three of them came back after the war.
And what about your mother? Where did she
My mother
come from?
was British, a British war bride.
Ah.
From a fairly good-sized family in London, England.
Perhaps the only war bride that I can remember who ever lived in Ballinafad.
My mother was the first war bride to come to Georgetown. I was the first war brat. And there was Leo Jameson lived in Ballinafad too, and I think his wife Margaret Jameson was a war bride too.
She was from Scotland.
And she was Scottish, but I'm not sure what time and when they came over.
Have you ever met your mother's family?
We returned to Britain in 1967 to meet Mother's family. She had never been over since she came here. She'd lost her parents, but she met all of her brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews when we went over in 1967.
So you came here in the late 40s, eh?
Yes.
And
we came over during the war in one of those flotillas and convoys dodging the U-boats.
Quite exciting, eh?
Yeah, well, it was for Mother. She was busy throwing up on the way over.
Oh.
And I was being looked after by the soldiers, and I was too young to appreciate it.
And how did your family make a living after they settled in the Fad?
After the war, I think my dad, I know he worked at Smith & Stone's at one time.
Georgetown?
In Georgetown, and he worked on the Abro Aero. And that was after we sold the house, the barnboard house. Well, it didn't stay barnboard for long because Jimmy Kirkwood's dad, the year after we bought it, he came and put insul brick on that house, and that house improved.
Good.
Mother got her picket fence across the front, and beautiful, beautiful rock gardens.
When did you move into it?
I was 13 years old when we bought the corner blacksmith shop buildings, and oh, did it take a lot of work to improve that place. There was no indoor plumbing in that place either. We moved into that place, and we've got 2 outhouses with that place. And it took a few years to get that place fixed up too.
Who did you buy from there?
Now, that estate had been left in the lawyer's hand because the Ferguson brothers had long passed away, and it had been empty for 5 years, so it took a while to get that settled.
What had it been before when they were there?
The blacksmith shop. By golly, when I was a child, I had straightened many a horseshoe nail on the anvils in that place.
I see.
Those Ferguson brothers fought like, oh my, they didn't get along at all, those two. They each had their own forge to do the horseshoes and the work in there. They each had their own forge. They couldn't work together at all.
That was Peter and Duncan, I think.
Yeah, Peter and Duncan Ferguson. Yeah.
I used to watch them.
Peter lived in the house beside the blacksmith, and Duncan lived up the side road. Yeah. And there was nobody left in the family that I was aware of to leave that estate to. But when we finally were able to buy it, it took us years to clean that place up. There was an old barn behind the house, and eventually we tore it down, but my goodness, didn't we find an antique car in the back of that place. My brother found it right away, I'll tell you. And when Dad wasn't looking, it was up and down the side road.
When he got everything fixed up, then what did he use the shop for?
Oh, it became Dad's carpentry shop, Archie's fix-it shop, because my dad's hobby was carpentry work. Yes, he loved his carpentry work, yeah.
So that was one of the businesses in Ballinafad then?
Yeah, because Dad, even when we were at the old house, he used the back kitchen part as carpentry work. He loved his carpentry work. And many people had carpentry work done by Dad. Even Swindlehurst Garage in Ballinafad, he did cupboards for them. The Swindlehurst brothers had a garage down the seventh line, it was called then. He made cupboards for their garage. Many people had carpentry work done by my dad, and even until the day he died, he was doing carpentry work. Yeah.
That's Trafalgar Road, they call it now, but
yeah,
for you and me, it
changed
was
his
always
name.
the 7th line.
It's Halton Road number 3, Trafalgar Road, 7th line. It keeps changing its name.
What other businesses were in the village at that time?
Oh my. Jim Kirkwood's feed mill. That mill serviced every farmer in the countryside. That was your dad's mill, I'm telling you. Your sister Shirley and I, we were the best cleaners he ever had. We would keep that mill brushed out. We swept around everything to keep that mill clean for your dad.
Probably,
and the store.
Probably unpaid sweepers.
Yeah, unpaid child labor, that was. But we had fun. We were the only ones who could climb up around those bins, up the ladders and around the bins. And we had no fear of going down the chute. But those days we had no fear of it anyhow. But
we used to give you a reward on the mill truck, remember?
Yeah, we used to be able to go to town in the mill truck, didn't we?
When we went out to farms delivering feed, you'd get a free ride.
Yeah, a free ride on the truck, yeah. Wouldn't consider that today, though. Kids didn't consider anything like that.
What about the other business in town?
The garage, Swindlehurst Garage. And the general store. The general store, where you could get the most fantastic arrangement of candies in the display at the front for a dime. Oh, you could get a fantastic dime bag full of candies. Those were the good old days. It's all gone now. And there's been several fires in that. Didn't they have some?
You got your mail in there too.
Oh, the post office still runs. They still run the post office. That's what's keeping the store going, is that post office. But the old days, you used to be able to go to the back of the store and get $1 worth of nuts and bolts too.
Where did you go to school when you were in the Fed?
Well, down the road, if you were good at getting out on time. I wasn't good. Down the road, a good walk, a mile down the road to the SS number 14 public school, Blue Mountain Public School.
Yeah,
and I found a write-up on the public school when it closed.
Who was
Rita Shorthill. Bless her pea-picking soul. She was a strict school teacher, but she was good. Yeah, she wrote too much on the blackboard.
If you're looking after 8 grades all at once, I guess you have to be tough.
8 grades crammed in there. I'm telling you, sit up straight and pay attention to the blackboard, Rita. She was good. But at one time we had 2 teachers. There'd be so many of us crammed in there, they'd have 2 teachers. I don't know how many students. There'd be 40 kids or more in there. Oh, yeah.
There were 12 when I was there.
12 when you went?
Yeah.
Well, we reproduced some of those farmers, I'll tell you. Because there would be so many of us, you know. They had to get those double seats, you know. They'd be double seats. There'd be 2 of us to a seat. I wanted to get into the big roads because the good-looking boys were in grade 8, you know.
That's what you tried for, eh?
I tried for, yes. Yes, the good-looking boys were in grade 8.
What was happening with social life? Were there any parties or things?
Well, you know, at the school they used to have the strawberry socials on the weekends.
Oh, yeah.
And they have the big flatbed trucks, you know. And they had these beautiful strawberry socials. They were good.
Yeah.
Don't have them anymore. Nobody wouldn't know what on earth the strawberry social was. But they used to have entertainment. And you'd have these lunch boxes. They were a cardboard box thing. And you'd have these lovely lunches and you'd bid for them. The men would bid for them. Whoever owned that lunch box, you got to have lunch with them. It was good. Those were the good old days. Don't have them anymore, do they? No.
Do you think they knew whose box it was?
Not
they were getting?
necessarily. If they were smart, they would, you know. They're smart.